Imagine a time when two different humans walked the same earth, not knowing one would soon vanish forever. This is the moment they met. The wind was cold that morning. It carried the scent of pine sap and wet earth. From the mouth of the cave, she watched the mist drift across the valley. The world below was still asleep. The forest wrapped in silver fog, the river whispering far away. Her name was Aru, though names were not spoken often among her people. They used glances, gestures, small sounds in the throat. Words were tools, precious and heavy like flint, deeming it surer. Aru's fingers were cracked from the cold. She rubbed them together, blowing warmth into her palms. The fire behind her hissed softly, a dying breath from last night's hunt. The scent of roasted hair lingered in the air, mixed with smoke and ash. Her people, 8 in number, still slept in the shadows of the cave, their bodies curled like stones beneath fur hides. The youngest, a boy, dreamed with his mouth open, the rhythm of sleep steady and deep. Aru stepped outside. The world was vast and quiet. The trees moved like slow beasts in the wind. She scanned the horizon, her eyes trained for movement, the flicker of fur, the shimmer of water, the shifting of light that could mean prey or danger. For many days, the hunt had been poor. Tracks led nowhere. The animals had moved south, following the herds that never returned this season. The air had changed, thinner and drier. The old ones said the world was turning colder. Aru had seen it, frost forming on the grass before the sun rose, ice creeping over the stream where her people drank. The sky itself seemed tired, but this morning something was different. A thin column of smoke rose far to the east, beyond the ridge, not the gray drift of burning branches. This smoke was straight and black, too steady for accident. Her heart thudded once, hard and uncertain. She had never seen such smoke that was not their own. She watched it rise, thin and strange, against the pale sky. Aru's breath clouded in front of her. She turned and called softly into the cave. The chief stirred, a broad man with thick arms and heavy brow, scars tracing his forearms. He was slow to wake, his eyes dark and wary. Aru pointed to the valley, her hand trembling slightly. He came beside her, squinting toward the ridge, his nostrils flared. The smoke was still there, rising without end. He grunted, low and thoughtful. No one else had lived near this valley for many winters. The mountain tribes had vanished after the great cold. Those who remained kept to the caves north of the river. Who, then, had made that fire? The chief said nothing. He turned back into the cave and began to wake the others. Soon 8 figures stood at the cave mouth, silent and tense. Each watched the strange smoke twist into the sky. The old woman, Saha, muttered under her breath, a sound between prayer and warning. Her eyes, clouded with age, held something close to fear. Aru felt the same unease. It was not just smoke. It was a sign of change or danger. They packed slowly, a fur, stone blades, dried roots. The chief motioned to Aru and 2 hunters. They would go first, find the source, see what burned. The others would stay behind, guarding the children and food. Aru tied the small blade of flint at her side. She felt its cold weight against her hip. The sky was brighter now, although the sun was still hidden behind the ridge. They moved through the forest, careful and quiet. The ground was frozen beneath their feet, covered in old leaves and frost. Birds fled from the trees as they passed. Hours went by. The smoke grew thicker, closer. The scent of burning would mix with something else, a smell unfamiliar, sharper than pine or ash. Aru frowned. It smelled like stone dust and cooked meat. They crouched near a slope, crawling to the edge. Below lay a clearing Aru had never seen, and in it, movement, figures, human figures, but not her kind. They were taller, thinner, their skin was lighter, their faces narrow, their hair long and tangled. They wore skin stitched together with skill Aru had never known, tighter, cleaner. Their fire burned bright, surrounded by stones arranged in a perfect circle. Aru's breath caught. The others watched in silence. There were 6 of them, 3 men, 2 women, and a child. They laughed. The sound was strange, lighter than any she had heard. It carried through the trees like the cry of a new bird. The men moved differently too, quicker, with long strides, tools hanging from their belts that glimmered in the light. Metal? No, not metal, but polished stone, sharper than any flint Aru had shaped. One woman knelt by the fire, stirring something in a hollowed bowl. Steam rose from it, carrying a smell that made Aru's stomach tighten with hunger. The chief made a sign to move back. They retreated behind a fallen log, hearts pounding. He looked at Aru. His expression was unreadable, confusion, fear, perhaps curiosity. They had heard stories of others long ago, people who came from the far plains beyond the rising sun. People who hunted differently, who used strange sounds and light tools, but no one had ever seen them until now. Aru's mind raced. Who were they? Were they dangerous? Would they steal food or bring fire? The chief's eyes told her they must watch longer. So they waited. The day passed slowly. The new people built shelters of branch and hide, fast and clever. They moved with purpose, their gestures filled with meaning. At dusk, they gathered again by the fire. One of the men lifted a long stick with a sharp point, not stone, but something smoother, straighter. He threw it into the distance. It flew far, whistling through the air, landing deep into a tree. Aru gasped. The power, the distance. It was like magic. The chief's jaw tightened. He whispered a low growl. Warning, not to move closer. As night fell, the strangers' camp glowed with firelight. Their voices drifted through the trees. Aru could not understand their words, but their tone was warm, full of rhythm and sound. It was a language of many notes, strange and beautiful. She felt her chest tighten with something new, wonder and fear together. When the moon rose, pale and white, she saw the faces of her companions in its glow. They were afraid. So was she. But beneath that fear, something else burned. Curiosity. The smoke had led her here, to a moment that would change everything she knew. Tomorrow, she thought, they would see what these others were, and whether the world was big enough for both. The forest did not sleep. Even when the humans' fire dimmed to a red glow, the woods whispered with movement. Owls called from far above. Branches creaked. The frost cracked softly under Aru's feet as she crouched in the dark. Her body was still, her breath shallow. Every sound felt sharper in the night. Every heartbeat a drum beneath her ribs. The strangers had gone quiet. Their camp shimmered faintly under the moonlight. The smoke from their fire rose thin and blue, trailing toward the stars. Aru could not look away. These people were so different, and yet they were people. Their faces caught the light like hers. Their laughter earlier had sounded warm, alive, filled with the same hunger and joy her own tribe once knew. But they built things. They made tools she could not name. They moved with confidence, not fear. And they had a child. Aru's gaze drifted toward the smallest one, a girl no more than 5 winters old, sleeping near the fire. Her small hand clutched a smooth stone, round and pale as bone. Something stirred in Aru then, a feeling deep and old, protective, curious, human. The chief touched her arm, bringing her back. His eyes warned her again. We watch, not touch. Aru nodded. But her mind was already moving ahead. If these people hunted the same forest, the same prey, what would happen when their paths crossed? Would there be blood or something else? The night crawled forward. Cold seeped into her bones. Her fingers stiffened around her spear. And then a sound. A low crack of branches from behind. Aru turned sharply. Something large moved in the dark. Slow, heavy breathing, rough. The chief froze. Another sound followed. Sniffing closer now, eyes gleamed faintly between the trees. Yellow, wide, a dire wolf. Its shape emerged from the shadow. Huge shoulders, long snout, fur matted from the cold. The hunters raised their spears, but the beast had already caught scent of the fire below. It was not after them. It was after the new people. The wolf moved downhill, silent as snow. Aru's breath stopped. Bleh. The strangers knew nothing. They slept. The beast crept closer. 10 paces. 5. Its muscles tensed. Its teeth flashed white. Then it leapt. Aru shouted. The sound tore from her throat before she could stop it. A single raw cry. Not word, not name, but warning. The camp erupted. The humans woke in chaos, shouting, scrambling, grabbing for weapons. The wolf landed beside the fire, jaws snapping. Sparks flew into the night. The men grabbed their long spears, smoother, longer than Aru's, and struck fast. The first blow missed. The second drove deep into the wolf's side. The beast howled, twisting, blood spraying across the stones. The air filled with the smell of iron and smoke. Aru's heart pounded. The wolf staggered, teeth bared, and fell. Silence returned. Only the crackle of the fire remained. The humans stood panting, staring into the darkness, and then toward where Aru hid. They had heard her cry. They were looking for its source. Aru froze. The chief's hand gripped her shoulder, urging her down, but it was too late. One of the men lifted a burning stick from the fire and stepped toward the trees. Light flickered over his face. Sharp features, a strong jaw, eyes wide with caution. He spoke. The words meant nothing to Aru, but his tone was not anger. It was searching, curious. Aru's breath trembled. The chief made the sign to retreat, slow and quiet. They crawled backward through the leaves, barely daring to breathe. The humans' firelight grew dim again. Soon, only the night remained. They did not stop until the slope was far behind them. When they finally rested, the chief looked at her with fury and disbelief. Her cry had risked them all, but Aru said nothing. She only stared into the trees where the wolf had fallen. She had saved them, and they had seen her kind. The old balance was broken now. The dawn came pale and thin. The sky glowed faintly pink over the ridges. Aru sat apart from the others, her thoughts tangled. The chief spoke with the hunters in low tones. His face was carved from stone. He knew the world was changing. The strangers had power, tools, and voices full of fire. They would not vanish like the tribes before them. They were the new wind moving across the earth, and Aru had called out to them. She had crossed the line between shadow and flame. Later that day, when they returned to their cave, the old woman Saha listened to their story. Her eyes grew distant, her breath heavy. She said the fire that burned in strange hands was not meant to be watched from afar. It spreads, she whispered. It takes the wood, the air, the sky. No one spoke after that. But Aru could not stop thinking of the child by the fire. The small hand gripping the round white stone, the way her face glowed in the firelight. That night, as snow began to fall over the valley, Aru dreamed. She saw two fires burning side by side, one small and red, the other bright and white. The wind blew between them, trying to keep them apart. But slowly, the flames leaned closer, and the smoke rose together, twisting into one sky. When she woke, her breath was cold mist. Outside, the snow had covered the earth. The river was silent under a skin of ice, and far away beyond the ridge, a single column of smoke still rose, unbroken, waiting. The snow had stopped. The world was white and still. The air was sharp enough to bite. Aru stood at the mouth of the cave, wrapped in furs stiff with frost. Below, the valley shimmered like bone beneath the rising sun. The smoke from the strangers' camp no longer rose. Only a dark scar remained on the snow where their fire had burned. Days had passed since the night of the wolf. The strangers had stayed one more day, then vanished, leaving behind footprints that froze in the mud and led east toward the open plains. Aru had watched them go. She had wanted to follow, but the chief forbade it. He said the forest was theirs and theirs alone. Yet in her heart, Aru knew the forest no longer belonged to only one kind of people. Something had shifted. The wind itself felt changed, carrying not just the scent of pine and smoke, but something new, something human. The days grew shorter, the hunts harder. One morning, the old woman Saha did not wake. The fire burned low beside her, her hands folded across her chest. Aru sat beside her for a long time, listening to the faint crackle of the embers. Saha had said the fire spreads. Aru understood now. It was not a warning. It was truth. Fire passes from one hand to another. It changes shape, but never dies. That night, when the others slept, Aru took a small torch from their fire. She wrapped her furs tightly and stepped into the dark. The snow whispered beneath her feet. The stars hung low and cold above the forest. She followed the trail east, the faint marks half buried in ice, the memory of footsteps that had moved on days ago. Each step felt like walking out of the old world. Hours passed. Her legs ached. Her breath came out in clouds. And then a glow. Far ahead between the trees, Aru stopped. The glow was steady, orange, alive, fire. She moved closer, her heart thudding hard against her ribs. The light grew stronger. And there, by the flame, the strangers again. The tall man, his hair bright in the firelight, the woman stirring the pot, and the child, the same girl. Still clutching her white stone, the girl saw Aru first. She froze her eyes wide, not with fear but wonder. Aru raised her hand slowly, showing she carried no weapon. The others turned. The man's spear lifted cautious. The woman whispered something soft, her tone calm. The man hesitated, then lowered the spear. Aru stepped forward, the torch in her hand trembling slightly. She placed it in the snow between them. Fire met fire. The two flames leaned toward each other, their light dancing together in the cold air. No words, no need, only the shared warmth. The child stepped closer, holding out her stone. Aru crouched, eyes level with the girl's. The stone was smooth, carved, marked with faint lines in a spiral. Aru reached out and touched it gently. The surface was warm from the girl's hand. In that moment, something passed between them. A recognition. A bridge of breath and blood. Two kinds of humans standing in the snow, lit by the same fire. The man nodded once. Slow, solemn, Aru rose, her heart heavy and full. She knew she would return to her people, tell them what she had seen. But she also knew that the world would never again be the same valley, the same forest, the same silence. It would grow. It would remember. It would carry the mark of this meeting, in stories, in children, in time itself. Aru looked one last time at the strangers, at the child smiling by the fire. at the endless white stretching beyond them. Then she turned toward the mountains. Her torch still burned in her hand. The snow reflected its glow like dawn breaking through darkness. The future, she thought, was already here, and it had her face.